So I just wanted to welcome everyone again to the Plant Powered Challenge 2025 here with Corewell Health. My name is Dr. Ann Dudley, and I am a pediatrician, and I am also lifestyle medicine certified, and I'm a culinary medicine instructor, and I have been for the last, I think, 5 years. And I also have 5 children, and my family eats plant-based and has been for about 7.5 years. And so I just want to make sure that everyone knows that place that I'm coming from. And I'm so happy to be with you here talking today about the rainbow diet. And I have my chef with me, and she's going to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alaina Elder Correa, and I'm a chef instructor with our Corewell Health Culinary Medicine program here in the South region. And we are just so excited to get cooking with you today. I've also been plant-based for many years and actually grew up plant-based, and it's something that's very dear to my heart. So I am so excited to be able to cook with you today.
Thank you, Alaina. I love this time of year when everyone is, kind of thinking about a new start, a fresh start, maybe a reset, and how we can, get started on that. And I want to really emphasize today that while we're talking about the rainbow diet, which means incorporating more colorful fruits and vegetables into our diet so that we can be as healthful as possible, so that we can have a long, healthy life. That would be the goal. So while we're talking about that, also, it may sound kind of lofty. It may sound like sort of a hard thing to comprehend or to begin if you're coming from a place that looks very different from that. However, I want to encourage you and to hopefully leave you with some advice that leaves you feeling hopeful, because this is something that I honestly didn't think was possible for myself. And I have found other family members and patients and colleagues and friends who have also taken on this journey and who have been able to take steps in the right direction, and it does not have to be difficult. So I think Chef is going to talk to us about the recipes that we're going to make today that incorporate these rainbow foods.
Okay, so we are going to make 2 recipes today. The first is our creamy tomato soup, which is a recipe I really enjoy. I think tomato soups are something you see on menus and maybe in the store, but what I like about this version is that it incorporates other vegetables that aren't typically found in a traditional tomato soup, like sweet potatoes and carrots, and they get blended right in with the tomato. And then after that, we are going to be making our purple cabbage and edamame salad, which is so colorful and bright and refreshing and has a really yummy peanut sauce.
Delicious. I can't wait. I'm hungry already. I'm glad we're doing this at lunchtime. So if you are cooking with us, please know that you should have your oven turned on. I forget the temperature.
350.
350 if you're going to be cooking with us. And Chef also wanted to just show quickly that you can line a baking sheet either with parchment paper or with.
This is a Silpat, which is reusable, but you can absolutely use parchment paper. You could probably get away with nothing, honestly, because it's just making bread cubes. But I'm going to set this aside for just a minute, and we will start with chopping our veggies. So if you are cooking along with us today, go ahead and get out your onion, your sweet potato, and your carrots, and we're going to begin by chopping those. Could you set that aside? Thank you. So in looking at the creamy tomato soup recipe, we've got our oven heated, and we're going to begin by chopping our onion. I'm actually going to have you set that to the side so everyone can see. All right, so I have here a white onion, and you can use, a different kind of onion if you wanted to. You could use a red onion and get even more color. But we have a white onion. You notice with an onion that it's going to roll around when you lay it down. Anything round like that, you want to be able to create a flat surface first, just for safety reasons as you're chopping. So I am going to just start by cutting this onion in half. And I've left the root intact. And I am just going to peel the skin off.
And an onion is a vegetable, and it is a white vegetable. And white, I think, is a color that we sometimes neglect when we're thinking of the rainbow and eating the rainbow diet. But white foods are very important. So maybe if you're a person who doesn't love onions, this is a way that you could sneak in a white vegetable because it's not very prominent.
And it will be pureed into the soup, so it just is offering flavor, and people that maybe don't like onion would probably not even notice it was there.
Correct.
Now, I sometimes will leave the root intact after peeling it, and that just keeps it from sliding around while you chop. So I'm going to hold my chef's knife in my right hand, and I keep a good grip on the knife itself so it just feels like a part of my hand. And then I will use my other hand to kind of form a claw to hold the onion. So I'm going to start by just doing slices down the length of the onion. And you can see, you can do it smaller if you'd like, but it's really not necessary since we're going to be pureeing all these veggies anyway. So now I will hold my hand and do the chopping. So go ahead and chop along with me if you are cooking. Take your time. If you're off pace with me or, you know, chopping a little slowly, that's perfectly fine. Now I have our pot waiting here for me. And so I'm going to just go ahead and put the onion into the pot. Need a little
So, and this is something that you could take a little shortcut from the grocery store and get pre-chopped onion if that's something that maybe you don't like cutting, or maybe you don't have time that day that you're making this. You could take a shortcut. There's often pre-chopped onions at the grocery store.
Even the sweet potato you might be able to find.
Yes.
And so if it's in your budget to buy pre-chopped vegetables, and that will help you to make some of these whole food plant-based meals, absolutely use those shortcuts. There's nothing wrong with something being more convenient if it's going to help you meet your health goals. So now I'm going to move on to our sweet potato. We need 2 cups of sweet potato, and that was about 1 cup of onion that I just put in the pot. I'm sorry I didn't mention that. So we are going to do about 2 cups of sweet potato and then 1 cup of carrot. I'm just slicing the ends off. Now our recipe does not require you to peel the sweet potato. If you want to, you can. However, there is some benefit to keeping the peel.
Yeah, sometimes we think of different nutrients that we can get from vegetables, and a lot of those come from that outer peel. There can also be some healthy bacteria and microorganisms that are found. Of course, we want you to rinse off the vegetables, but you don't have to scrub them or use any kind of special wash, and you can keep the peel on while you are getting ready to cook these.
Correct. And all our veggies have already been washed here today.
Yes.
Now you'll notice I again cut my vegetable in half to make a flat surface. When you are working with something hard like a sweet potato or maybe a squash, like a hard squash, it's even more important that you do that so that you can avoid rolling because we want to save those fingers. So I cut these into long strips first, and then I'm just going to cube them. Similar size to the onion.
And these orange sweet potatoes are really readily available at the grocery store, but there are other kinds of sweet potatoes. There's like a white variety and a purple, and those would work. They wouldn't add the same color, obviously, to this recipe. And so they might be better used in a different recipe, but I love all the flavors. They have different benefits, you know, like those dark purple sweet potatoes.
I love the purple ones.
Have a lot of nutrient power as well. So I think that would be a great choice. That's also something to think about when you're thinking about the rainbow diet, is that maybe there's already a food you like, but you haven't tried other varieties of that fruit or vegetable, for example. So maybe, you know, if there's different, even carrots come in different colors, lots of different colors. I can't remember the exact number, but they purple, white, yellow, red. You know, there's so many different shades of carrots. So we do get different components, different vitamins, and different antioxidants from different colored vegetables. So that would be something to keep in mind as well.
So I just used about half of this sweet potato, and you can save the other half and do something else with it. What do you like to have sweet potatoes in?
I love to just roast sweet potatoes because I think that they add a sweet bite that sometimes I'm looking for in lots of different recipes. So if I'm making a grain bowl, or if we're having even sometimes like a pasta, or if we're having something that I want something sweet on the side, I think that they add that kind of sweet component. So that's how we usually use it.
I have a carrot now, and this is a rather large carrot that we got. So I'm going to cut it in half as well. With carrot, there's so many things you can do. You can shred it. I like it shredded sometimes in a salad. We're just going to do little cubes of carrot. So I'm going to cut it down lengthwise again to just make quarters basically of the carrot. This again is not peeled.
So I think what you're doing with all these vegetables is basically making them all the same size so that they cook at the same time. So that's something to keep in mind if you're adding all of the food to the pot at once, making sure that it's similar size, or even if it's more dense and then there are less dense components, you may want to even cut something that's very dense, even smaller sometimes. So kind of keeping that in mind so everything can cook all at once. And carrots are one that I find that my kids can help chop. If they have a knife that is safe, and if I'm there watching them, that seems to be one that I can make those little planks and they can cut for me.
Sure, and kids typically like carrots. They're very crunchy too.
Right.
I have 3 kids as well. I know Dr. Dudley has 5. We have a lot of kids between us, so we do think about, options that are kid friendly. And my kids would love this soup and probably not even realize that some of those other things like sweet potato are in there.
Well, and you could set these to the side and they could have that as a snack while you're chopping.
Or you could just add it a tiny bit. It's not going to make a big difference. So I've added my 1 cup of carrot in there now. So in the pot, we have the onion and sweet potato and carrot. And so now we're going to add our tomato products. So I have here a can of peeled tomatoes, all right, whole peeled tomatoes. And it's a 14 ounce can. So I'm just going to open my can. And canned things like this can be really useful to just have on hand in your pantry to use anytime, especially if you're running low on fresh produce or maybe it's not easy to access.
Yeah, canned fruits and vegetables as well as frozen fruits and vegetables are generally, picked at their peak ripeness. And so it's really great to still maintain those health components while, like you said, having them available even at times when maybe they're not in season or just keeping them in the pantry for those nights that you're busy and you're not stopping at the grocery store. Having some of those on hand is really helpful.
So I put my whole tomatoes into the pot. And now I'm going to do the tomato paste. So if you are following along, you can open your tomato paste. You can find it canned like this, which is what I have. And I actually have a low salt version, which we typically in our classes recommend, as much as possible when buying canned to try to find the no salt added version. Then you have a little bit more control over the sodium content. So we are going to do 5 tablespoons, or if you want, you could do a 1/4 cup and a tablespoon.
There you go. And sometimes it seems like I always have like part of the can left over. What do you like to do with the leftover? Should we throw it in the fridge right like this?
No.
Okay.
So I actually will freeze sometimes my extra tomato paste, but I also will buy the tubed tomato paste. You can find tomato paste that's in a tube and then it has a cap and closes. And I find that definitely will last longer in the fridge. So we're doing 5 tablespoons here. Okay, and honestly, it's almost the entire container.
And this is going to add that richness, the depth of flavor, which is going to be really great.
You get that much more concentrated tomato flavor, which is really delicious in tomato soup. All right, so now we have our vegetable broth. Now I just have a store-bought vegetable broth that's low sodium, and this is actually the exact amount we need because we need 4 cups. So sometimes these can be useful, but you can also make your own stock either from scratch or you can use like a bouillon, for example, and make it at home. So I'm adding this entire thing, again, low sodium, so we have control over how much sodium is going into the soup. All right, so now I have the whole broth. We're going to do our seasonings, add our seasonings in. We have some dried basil here. You could, of course, use some fresh basil as well, especially if it's summertime and you have it on hand. I love to throw some herbs into my garden every summer, and then, it's really inexpensive. We use them a lot. I'm adding 1/2 teaspoon of dried basil, or I'm sorry, 1/4 teaspoon. The other 1/4 is for the bread.
Oh, yeah. I think that while we are making this too, it's something that just came to mind is that eating the rainbow kind of always keeps the the seasonal, recipes kind of on top of
Yes.
mind. But also, if you wanted to cook something sort of out of season, if you have like those frozen or canned, options available, I think it kind of like making a fresh tomato soup in summertime when you have them from your garden is also really delicious if you have that option. But you could freeze some and have it in the fall, or you could freeze the whole tomatoes and have those later. So I think that that's something else to think about too, if you're trying to eat more plant-based.
And I'm adding the salt. Now it's just a 1/4 teaspoon, so very low amount of salt. I love what you just shared, because the truth is that when you are eating the rainbow, you're really looking for the most colorful version of that food.
Right.
And when you're eating seasonally, you're getting the best version of that food, and you're getting it colorful. And sometimes you can get a better deal on it because you can buy from farmers markets or other local vendors that just have it at a better reduced price.
Right.
Okay, so we have the salt in there now, and we're just gonna do the garlic powder and the red pepper flakes. I have a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder and 1/8 of a teaspoon of red pepper flakes. Red pepper flakes do pack a little bit of a punch, so if you don't do well with spice, you can remove that ingredient if it's
Yeah, I
not
don't
for
remember
you,
this
but
one being
it's
too
just not really
spicy, but
spicy.
this is even something that maybe that would be a good way to kind of modify it for different family members. If you
Yeah,
have kids that don't want the spice, you could maybe omit it and just add it afterward. But something that this is highlighting is that,
tiny.
yes, a small amount, that spices and herbs are a really important source of really concentrated antioxidants. And so sometimes I think we forget about that it's really important to kind of add those in whenever we can to get those full benefits of the rainbow diet.
And a tiny amount like this can be a good way to adjust your palate.
Right.
Getting used to it. My kids are getting used to spice still.
That's right.
But I find that they're getting better at it. Okay, we are going to move to the stove for a minute, and I'm going to just turn my burner on here. So we have, again, all of those ingredients that I've just shared, and we are going to bring this to a boil. So you'll want to put your burner up to high and bring it up to a boil. It's going to take a few minutes, so we'll just kind of keep an eye on this. And while we do so, we're going to cut our bread.
So you're going to be cutting the bread to make what, chef?
We are making like a little bread cube crouton that can be served on top of the soup. And I find, a lot of people really enjoy that. You might even be used to having tomato soup with something like a grilled cheese. It gives that same kind of flavor and idea, but without the cheese.
Is there anything else that you like to serve? So when I'm making tomato soup, I like to think about, and this is how I actually approach all of our meals at home, if I can, is when I think about what I'm going to serve, or when I picture it in my mind, or when I see it even plated, what other colored fruit or vegetable can I add? How can I make this look and also taste the best, but also be adding other nutrients that maybe aren't already in the meal? So for example, adding the whole grain, I think is really great in this.
And that's 100% whole grain, whole wheat bread, which I would look for that 100% on the label to know that you're getting that, or that the first ingredient on the label is 100% whole wheat.
Yes, I think that's a great thing to point out.
And this could easily be made gluten-free. If you are gluten-free, you could use a gluten-free bread to make your breadcrumbs. I am just cubing 4 pieces of the whole wheat bread here. And we're going to put this on top of our pan that I showed you earlier that's lined with the silpat. So it does say on the recipe that you can toss it with a little olive oil. There's no exact amount given. So if you'd like to, you could add a little drizzle of olive oil. It'll just help those to crisp up. You could also use like an olive oil spray. I like to use an oil mister. Do you ever use those?
Yes, an oil mister is really helpful, because sometimes if you're just using the oil, if you don't have it measured out like we do, sometimes that can be really tricky. You might accidentally put too much. And that's something else with salt, I think, particularly. I try to pour it into my hand first if I'm going to sprinkle it, or measure it to make sure that I'm not adding too much, because sometimes we can be a little heavy-handed with the oil or the salt if you're not careful.
And I am just adding now that other 1/4 teaspoon of the dried basil on top of the bread cubes.
So what I was going to say earlier is, if you're having the bread cubes, so that kind of is that, that bread addition that we look for sometimes with soup, particularly tomato soup. Is there anything else that you like to have on the side I was thinking maybe roasted chickpeas for a little added protein.
Sure.
Sometimes I like to add some fruit on the side to make sure that we're getting, those benefits as well. Is there anything else that you would maybe have?
Well, if it were me, I'd probably have it with a hearty salad.
Right.
I love
Like
a
we're
hearty
making, like
salad.
we're making after this. Yes.
Yeah, with
Perfect.
maybe some kind of whole grain and some kind of bean in it.
Yes.
But yeah, I always try to think, is there a way to add a bean?
Yes.
Something that might give you a little bit more of that plant protein.
Right. Absolutely. Those roasted chickpeas that we have on our website, I think are a good topping as a crouton, sort of also. They can get pretty crunchy. So you can find that recipe on our website.
So they are all prepped now. I have a little drizzle of olive oil and that basil on them, and we are going to pop these in the 350-degree oven just for a few minutes, about 10 minutes, until they are golden brown. So if you're cooking along with us, you can go ahead and get these set to go into your oven. And I'm just going to go ahead and put them in while Dr. Dudley is talking with you a bit.
Yeah. So while we have a little bit of time, I wanted to also mention that Alaina and I are really excited to teach our resident classes here at Corewell South. And so our training physicians in emergency medicine, internal medicine, and family practice, they are all coming to our classes individually in their particular specialties. And we teach them very similar techniques that we're doing today. And we also go over case studies. We cook together, we eat together, and then we kind of come back to the case studies. But I think one of the coolest things that we have found is that not only are the residents able to eat better themselves because they have learned new techniques, they're also able to share that information, with their patients and with the patient families. And so they are already coming back and telling us that they're seeing the benefits of sharing that information with their patients and themselves and their own families. So they're saying, well, now I sleep better because I cut out, those foods that were maybe not great. Or now I have, more time because I'm thinking about prepping ahead, that kind of stuff. What's a good moment that you have had during the resident classes?
I think one of my favorite things about the resident classes is how they educate, but they also help to feed into our community classes. So what's happening is these doctors are going out, they're getting excited, they're talking to their patients about these topics, and then they're able to refer patients to come to our community classes like Family Kitchen, which is a program we do.
This program?
Right, and other classes as well. And so I find that very inspiring. I like any kind of opportunity where it can kind of benefit both parties like that. Like they're learning, they're engaged, and they're also helping to benefit the community in that way.
And we have had some residents share that the reason why they chose Corewell over other health systems when they were looking into their residency was that we offered these types of classes. And a lot of programs around the country do not. I would say most do not. And so we are, really grateful to be able to be a part of this, kind of novel program that we have. Because it is so helpful, and residents really see that when they're selecting their program. So that's really great.
Yeah. I have the soup getting ready to boil. It's coming along, and the breadcrumbs in the oven. And so I'm just going to start clearing our space a little bit so we can get ready to start working on that salad while the soup is cooking. So bear with us while we get our space set up.
So while we're switching over, let me see what else we can talk about here. So, we are going to be making this edamame salad that is a rainbow, all in itself, which is really fantastic. Yep. So excuse me. Do you need this under there?
It's okay.
Okay. So we are going to be making this kind of rainbow salad. And one thing that I have found is that when you present things this way, that looks really beautiful, like you're going to see in just a few moments, that it becomes maybe more appetizing for family members that maybe weren't sure about eating more plants. So when I was dropping off my kids at school this morning, I asked them, how should I speak about eating plants, to this group that I'm going to be presenting to today? Or what would you recommend about eating the rainbow? And they said, if it looks good, maybe you'll be willing to try it, even if it's something that you think you don't like. So, for example, maybe your kid says, "Oh, there's no way I'm trying that vegetable." Well, maybe if we can present it in a way that is beautiful, that it can be enticing for them. So, and also we have found in our family kitchen program, especially, that if the kids are able to help, they want to try it. if they're the ones chopping and doing the work, they feel more invested.
Sure. Yep, I absolutely agree. And we have had so many kids come back just so excited. And they come to our graduate classes after they finish the program and they're just really have this taste for cooking, which I think is so amazing because then they get to carry that knowledge and
Right.
experience with them through life.
Absolutely.
So I'm getting set up here with a few things. I have my quinoa here. So if you are cooking with us, you're going to want to get your quinoa out and also a little pot. So I just have a small saucepan with a lid, which is what you'll need for the quinoa, and then measuring spoons and cups for measuring.
So a lot of these supplies you may already have in your kitchen, but chef, what would you say that someone should definitely, maybe think about making an investment if they had to have one tool?
One tool. I think a good knife.
A good knife.
Very important.
I would agree.
And don't be afraid of using a chef's knife. I know a lot of people are nervous about a chef's knife because it looks big and maybe intimidating. But once you get the hang of it, you can do most of your cooking that way. I am just noticing that our soup is coming to a boil, so I just want to bring it down a little, and we're going to let it simmer away while we're making our salad.
It's looking great.
It's smelling good too. If
It
you're
does smell
cooking,
really
you know, but if you're not cooking with us right now, it smells really good. And today is quite cold here where we're at in Ben Harbor, and so it sounds good to have a soup.
Absolutely.
All right, so we are going to start by getting our quinoa going. So I'm grabbing a saucepan with lid, and I have some waters over there. Can you grab me the 1 cup, please?
And quinoa, we kind of treat it like a grain and think of it like a grain. It's actually a seed, but it gives us the protein and the fiber benefits like a grain. So that's how we kind of use it. And you'll see it used that way a lot.
And it's also naturally gluten-free. So if, again, that's a concern for your family, it's an easy replacement for maybe a farro or another grain that you might see in a salad or a soup if you need a gluten-free option. So I'm going to put 1 cup of water into my saucepan here. And then we'll do a 1/2 cup of quinoa. So that's the typical ratio when you're doing quinoa. I sometimes might even do slightly under the cup of water. I find it comes out really fluffy, but you don't want to do more than a cup with this amount of quinoa. So I have we just have a regular white quinoa here, but you can get the tricolor mix or the darker variety.
Right. There's kind of red, kind of
red. There's kind of a black one.
Right.
Any of them will work in this recipe. So I'm adding the quinoa to the water, and we're just going to go ahead and bring this to a boil.
I think also if you have family members who are maybe used to eating rice, quinoa is a nice way to, especially if you're used to eating white rice, I should say, which is a good food. It is the most commonly consumed food in the world, is rice. But if we can maybe, work towards more fiber containing, maybe using the brown rice, or even what I like to do sometimes is a combination of rice and quinoa. Sometimes some family members kind of miss the texture of rice. So I'll mix it with quinoa, and you could cook them separately and then combine them. Or if you're doing white rice, you can cook it right with the quinoa. So maybe that would be a way to kind of introduce the quinoa to your family in a kind of a slow way. And if you use the darker quinoa, it makes that like confetti.
Confetti rice.
I like to call it confetti or like zebra. Yeah, I think that's really cute when you can kind of have that color too. It just makes it more exciting.
Right. And if you're cooking for kids and you can find a way to make it sound
anything exciting. That's right.
Great. Like you like to put spinach in muffins.
Right. Absolutely.
Absolutely. It's like folk.
Yes.
Pancake.
When we make green banana muffins, I'll blend up spinach right with the bananas, and then they turn green. And I just tell my kids, oh, that's because they're Hulk muffins. So things like that I think are really helpful for kids, kind of talking about food in a positive way, highlighting the importance of the ingredients, like this beautiful purple cabbage.
This is a beautiful cabbage. We're gonna go ahead and start chopping now while we have the time, and then we'll do the sauce last. So if you're doing cooking along with us, I'm just going down to chop, because on our recipe it has everything already chopped, but I have not chopped it. We're chopping together. This is a beautiful purple cabbage. Sometimes it's called red cabbage. I've already peeled the outer leaves off of it. Again, it's really heavy and it's round. So we're going to start by trying to get a flat surface. So
This is another place that you could take a shortcut, but I will say
yes,
that with something
I wanna
like,
talk about that.
well, it was something like cabbage, though, I think that sometimes the pre-chopped goes bad. If you're not going to use it right away, sometimes it might not last as long as like a whole head, for example. So
Well, and if you do have a a food processor with like a slicing or grating blade, you
Right.
could use that. You could also use a mandolin if you have that, but you can do it with just a regular knife. So I'm going to take this core out. You can see that the cabbage has this white core here. I'm noticing my quinoa is starting to boil, so I'm just going to go ahead and cover it and turn it down. I'm sure we've all had moments where things started to boil over.
I can say
Go a
that I've
little
had a couple of those
crispy.
when the 5 children are in the kitchen with me. That is absolutely sure.
While I am coring this, would you
Yes.
mind getting the our
Absolutely.
bread cubes out of the oven? I think they're about ready. So they have been in there for just about 10 to 12 minutes. There's a hot
Thank
pad
you.
there. And I'm just going to take this core out. So I'm just cutting it in like a wedge. I'll try to do this so you can see. Just kind of wedging out that core because nobody's going to want to eat that. And then it's gone.
I'm gonna put this over here. Is that okay?
And we want this to be kind of in the bite size range. So you may need to kind of chop it again more. I'm just going to quarter this cabbage. And we are looking for 2 cups of chopped purple cabbage. So we're going to get this quite quickly. But if you're doubling or tripling this recipe, you might end up using more. What are some of your favorite things to make with like a purple cabbage?
I just used some
Or any
cabbage
cabbage.
the other night. I actually had green, but I love purple too. I just couldn't find a purple one that day, but I put it into a wrap. I think I actually told you about it. Alaina and I love to share recipes together. I was
Yes,
making a
we do.
lentil wrap, and I put the cooked but kind of smashed lentils that were really highly seasoned, and then put a lot of cabbage and a little bit of spinach and wrapped it up in a lawash wrap, like a whole grain wrap. So, and then dipped it in like a tahini sauce when I was eating it. So that was adding, like the nutty seed as well, which was great. Super delicious. But that was one way that I like to do. I like to eat it fresh, but I also love to roast
I
cabbage.
love to roast it.
I love to roast it. It's so good. And I think that we sometimes forget about that.
We do. I'll tell you what I do, but you
Yeah.
can also tell me what you do. I like to take it and when it still has that base on, just trim the base and then wedge it. So
Right.
it's like in little wedges. And then I like to brush it with a mix of olive oil, fresh lemon juice, and garlic,
Yum.
and then roast it like that. It makes a delicious side dish. Smells really good as well.
Yes.
So I've sliced all of this. I'm just going to go through with my knife again and just cut it into more bite-sized pieces because you don't want, a 4-inch long slice of cabbage in your salad. We are going to use that,
This bowl?
actually that bowl
Okay.
first, and we'll put it in that at the end.
Yep.
So we're just getting our bowl for our cabbage. This is a little bit more probably than what we need. So we're just going for 2 cups. Again, if you have extra, you could, make a different salad throw it on top of another salad, saute it with a little garlic. I would love that. I like to make a slaw as well with just a ton of fresh lime juice, fresh grated garlic, and cilantro, and let it sit for a while.
With the cabbage.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, that
I put
sounds
that
really
on
good.
tacos with rice and beans,
Just kind of like a
burgers
quick
even.
ferment sort of. Yeah, that sounds
Right,
delicious.
it gets kind of tender.
So,
Right.
so that's one thing that we haven't said yet that just kind of came to mind is that eating this way, eating the rainbow, and while it makes sure that you have all of the different components, the antioxidants, the anthocyanins, the minerals, the nutrients that you need from different vegetables, you're getting protein in all of these plants. And I think we forget about that sometimes, that plants contain proteins of all kinds. Every plant contains every amino acid, which are the building blocks of plants. They contain all of them just in varying amounts. So it's really vital that we eat all different plants and vegetables and fruits and grains and nuts and seeds and herbs, because then we're getting the whole range of all of those amino acids, and our body assembles them into the proteins that we need. So it is very easy. If you're getting enough calories, you're getting enough protein if you're eating a plant-based diet. So I just want to make sure that we say that. But also we're feeding our gut. So we're
Mhm.
giving our gut all of that good fiber that then will help keep our digestive system happy. And that helps so many other systems in our body as well. So
This recipe also has carrots, so we're
yes.
getting our carrots in today. We're just going to do a chop of these carrots, and we only need a cup. I'm guessing this is more than we need, so I'm going
These are
to.
big carrots.
They are. We always get these
Yeah.
in our grocery orders, and they are quite big. So we're just going to do it into a bite-sized little chop.
So, and while you're doing that, I want to also mention that, like I said, I have, quite a few kids at home, and something that I like to do that I think is helpful is save any extras that you
Mhm.
have and put these in the lunchbox for the next day. You can even
That's
do it
great
right
idea.
while you're packing leftovers. You can put the leftovers in the lunchbox, but you can also any kind of extra scraps that you would maybe just put back in the fridge. Can you make that into like matchsticks, for example, or some kind of dipping for the kids, like the cucumber or the carrot, and then add it in the lunchbox with hummus.
Absolutely. I'm a big proponent of reducing food waste. So whenever possible, thinking about how am I going to use the rest
How
of
else?
this?
Right.
What am I going to make with this? Try to build on recipes. Have recipes that kind of build on the ingredients you've purchased throughout the week
Yes.
so that you're not letting things go bad. And I would say like keeping a nice, clean, organized fridge will really help with that when possible, because then you
Yes.
can see what you have and things aren't getting lost there in the back of the fridge.
I think that is a great tip.
We're gonna add our carrots now to our slaw. So we have about a cup there of the chopped carrots. While I have it, I'm gonna add the edamame as
Look at how
well.
beautiful that bright green. I love.
Now, you do not have to buy it in the shell and hand shell all of these. You can buy them shelled.
So can you tell us what this is, though, if someone doesn't know what
Absolutely.
edamame is?
It is a soybean.
Yes.
Yes, but it's not gotten all the way to the dried stage where maybe it would get ground into something and put in as
Okay.
a soy flour or something. So these are freshly thawed.
Yeah.
I bought them frozen, we thawed them, and I have the correct amount here. So we have 3 cups of shelled edamame, and I'm just gonna throw that in. Look at that color.
It already is beautiful.
Isn't that beautiful? We haven't even added everything, but you have some really pretty things in here. And so the last thing that we're going to chop is our cucumber, and we just need about half a cup. I have this huge English cucumber, which is far more than we need. So I'm just going to take off the end here. That'll probably give us the amount we need. So these are nice because I think they're a little bit more tender.
Right.
The skins are more tender as well. So maybe if you're used to having to peel a cucumber, you wouldn't feel like you need to with this version.
So this English cucumber is the kind that usually comes wrapped in plastic, is how I usually
Correct.
find it. Or you
Yeah.
could maybe use those little mini Persian cucumbers, or
Yeah, you
those little
could.
small ones.
But any
you're right,
cucumber you have access to is fine. Yeah.
Absolutely. But like you said, the bigger ones sometimes have more thick peel that you might want to peel at least maybe some of it, like do stripes is what I
And
like to
Dr.
do. Half
Dudley,
of
I
them.
had a couple of questions for you that
Yes.
came in
Please.
real quick. So there was a question about high protein, other examples of edamame. So people that maybe are trying to incorporate more high protein, plant-based proteins in their diet and how they might do that. What are some other examples?
Yes.
And then also somebody was asking about rinsing quinoa. I typically, personally as a chef, don't rinse them. I find if I get them packaged and they're clean, I don't rinse them. I know in some cases, Lana, I know sometimes it's personal preference for people. So
Right.
I guess that one I would leave it as it's personal preference, what people want to do, but would love to
Sure.
hear from you more about the protein, the plant-based
Yes.
protein.
So I want to say again that I think that we are stressed too much about protein, and we should actually be focusing more on fiber. So I think that, just to say that kind of straight out, like I said, if you are a person who is consuming enough calories for your body and also for your activity level, and while considering any maybe chronic illness or other conditions that you have, because we know that different bodies require different amounts of calories. So we can't just look at a table, that will give us a basic idea, but I would also consult with your own doctor, and ask, am I a person who needs more, or even could benefit from less? Maybe you have a kidney issue, and maybe you need to be careful of how much protein you're getting, or you can't have certain kinds of proteins. So thinking about that, but also thinking of eating a plant-based diet, if you're able to eat so much more volume than you would if you were consuming more highly processed foods, or or also like animal products, because you would be getting higher calories, but also saturated fat with a lot of those foods. As opposed to this kind of diet, you're really cutting a lot of that out. So yes, we do need more protein. If that's something that you're concerned about while eating this diet, if you don't think that you're getting enough, one way that you could do that, like I said, fiber is the main goal, but if you want to add more in this salad, for example, this edamame has a lot of protein. So I wouldn't be super concerned about that. But if you wanted to switch that out, maybe you don't like edamame, I think another good swap for that would be green peas, and kind of do it the same way, thaw them. And I think that would be pretty equivalent as far as the protein if you do it per volume swap for that. And that would be maybe a little bit more friendly for like a toddler or a person that has maybe chewing issues. You could have the peas as a component that you pull out, and they could have those separate. But I think, this kind of meal, it'd be good to feed for a family, but maybe if you have a baby, they might not be able to eat the cabbage unless it was cooked. So you could maybe make them a kind of a smaller portion, but the peas would be helpful in case you're worried about choking on edamame. But also you could add something like tofu, like crumbled seasoned tofu, or even cubed seasoned tofu. I think that would be really delicious in this. I think you could also do something like a cold soba noodle. Soba is a type of grain that has a lot of protein.
Buckwheat, right?
Yeah, buckwheat. When you have that kind of noodle, that would add some protein as well. And it's also a grain, adding lots of fiber. You could do tempeh, you could add a bean. There's so many kinds of beans that you could add into this dish, but also into other dishes. If you're looking to add more protein in general, I would think about those things particularly. Hopefully that helps.
All right, we're going to start. Could you grab that peanut butter? We're going to start our dressing now for this salad, and it has a really delicious peanut sauce. If peanuts are just not an option for your family, you could try it with almond butter. You could even do sunflower seed butter for a totally allergy-friendly option.
Right.
It's got a lot of other flavors going on, so it should mix well with any of those.
You could probably do sesame
seed or
seed
nut
butter
butters.
would be good.
I mean, we're going to put sesame seeds
Yeah.
in it. So
So
I think
tahini or some other.
tahini, correct.
Yeah.
I think there should be some measuring spoons right over there.
Yep.
Could you?
Tell us about this particular peanut butter and maybe what kind of peanut butter you look for, Chef.
Absolutely. So this peanut butter is actually says 100% peanuts right on the label. And if you look at the ingredients, it is just peanuts. And so that's what I look for, is just a natural peanut butter. You'll notice that it separates into the oils on top.
Right.
So you will need to stir it well before using it. But then you're getting just that whole ingredient.
So there's not added oil, there's not added,
added
salt
even,
or sugar. A lot of the peanut butter that you may be used to eating, especially that is served a lot of times to kids, has a lot of, what's that?
The
Water. A lot of added oils and fats, but also a lot of sugar. And I think that's another thing to think about, maybe switching your mindset. Kids don't have to eat kid food.
Correct.
Kids can just eat the food that the rest of the family is eating. Kid food, I mean like food that's typically advertised for children. Kids can eat the same meal as the rest of the family. You could modify it a little, but you don't have to. They are capable of eating those foods. So maybe introducing something like natural peanut butter is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, that's all we use at home. And so we don't know the difference.
I find that the taste, once you get the taste for it, it's hard. I wouldn't be able to do the opposite. So
I agree.
I found that with a lot of plant foods.
Exactly. I enjoy this kind of peanut butter. The quinoa I just checked, it is very close. It will usually take between 10 and 15 minutes. So just keep an eye on it. My tomato soup is just simmering away over here. And I've just checked the sweet potato and it's starting to soften, so it's getting closer. So we're going to work on our dressing now. And the first ingredient that we're going to add is water. Okay, so we have here about, is it a third a cup of water? All right, so I'm going to do this in a blender. If you don't have a blender at home, you can absolutely do it in a bowl with a whisk. Okay, so most of the time with our recipes, there's a workaround to work.
Well, and I would maybe just use hot water if I was going to do that, because it would blend
absolutely. It's a good idea.
Whisk in a little better.
All right, so I'm adding my water, and then we are doing the peanut butter here, and I have a third a cup of peanut butter. So I'm just going to grab my third cup spoon. Cup over here. And since this is like a newer jar, it's a little bit runnier. I'm just going to pour it right into my 3rd cup.
I just made a dressing like this the other night and I thought I should have used my blender, but I didn't. And so I whisked it and it came out great. It came out fine. I just had to work a little bit harder. I got a little bicep workout at the same time.
Sometimes I don't want to get everything dirty anyways, because then
Right.
I have to wash it all.
Right.
So there's my 3rd cup of peanut butter. And then next we're going to be adding in 3 tablespoons of lime juice. Now I have fresh limes here, which is going to make a delicious fresh lime juice. If you happen to have on hand the lime juice that's already squeezed, that's also fine. Use what you have. So I'm just going to cut these in half. And we are going to use our citrus reamer over here, citrus juicer. I'm just going to pop it in. If you don't have this, don't worry about it. Just juice it into a little bowl with your hand if you need to. So we're going to be doing 3 tablespoons, which is just under a 1/4 cup. So I'm just pulling my, a 1/4 cup is 4 tablespoons. So I'm just pulling my 1/4 cup out here so I have an estimate.
So, and if you have limes that are maybe a little bit tricky, they're a little bit firm, rolling them on the counter, I think is a good way to kind of, add a little pressure to roll to make them kind of release their juices a little more naturally. Some limes are really juicy and some, man, they're like almost dry inside. So sometimes make sure maybe that you get a couple extra if you are, oh my goodness.
If you're prone to dropping.
If you're prone to dropping them, that might be a good idea.
This, I think I am only going to need 1 because this one is pretty juicy.
Good. We got lucky.
Now you will want to store them also out on your counter if they're not quite ripe enough yet. And then that will help them to ripen up.
Yes, if they're fresh from the fridge, they would also be too firm to squeeze.
Okay.
Good job.
So I'm going to add in that fresh lime juice now. All right, next up we have some low sodium soy sauce, all right, or reduced sodium. And I am going to add 2 tablespoons of that. There's no other salt called for in this recipe. It's just from the soy sauce. And this is going to pour very slowly.
So this is adding the salt, but also the umami. I can pop that cap off for you if you want. Oh, you got it. Okay.
It's just new, so it's taking a moment. And if you have, again, I'm bringing up allergies.
No, yeah, that's great.
I know there are some people watching that have allergies. If you have a gluten allergy, you can use tamari instead, and then it'll be a gluten-free. If you can't have soy, you wouldn't probably be making this recipe, but you could use coconut aminos.
Coconut aminos or tamari,
instead. So that's 1 tablespoon. I'm gonna do 1 more tablespoon of the soy sauce.
And I think that this is, so we're making our own peanut sauce. You may be familiar with a store-bought peanut dressing or sauce. And while those can be delicious and convenient, a lot of times they have ingredients that we maybe want to try to limit or even avoid altogether. And they certainly, I would say, almost unanimously have too much salt. So in this way, we can moderate how much we are using to make sure that we're staying within the guidelines that we're looking for.
Correct. I'm just going to clean up my area here real quickly. After the soy sauce, we're going to add in some fresh ginger. Fresh ginger is one of my favorite ingredients. I use it in so many things. Even a lot of my soups have this in the broth, and it makes it very delicious. I'll give you one of my favorite tips of all times, and that is that I always freeze my ginger. So I like to take it home because this will go bad quickly if you are not using it very often. So what I'll do is just wash it real well, put it in a container or a bag, freeze it, and then I like to use a microplane or a rasp, and I will just grate it straight into my dishes that way from frozen. It grates well. You don't even have to remove the skin that way. And I've been doing that for probably 20 years.
Well, and then if you have leftover, fresh ginger root and you are freezing it, you can use it for, muffins. You could use it in different sauces. You could use it, like you said, soups. You could put it in your tea in the morning. There's so many different applications that you could have. You would have it readily available.
Just watch your fingers, obviously.
Watch your fingers.
You may also just chop it and mince it fine. It's going to be blended, so it doesn't have to be minced super fine. The only thing you should be aware of is that if you're mincing it and just throwing it into a dish, you want it to be fine because those chunks of fresh ginger can be pretty spicy almost.
Spicy, yeah, they taste kind of hot.
So
yeah.
we're just doing 2 teaspoons here.
And I would much prefer fresh in this kind of application, but if you
Absolutely.
only had powdered, that would be another option as well.
Mhm.
You just have to modify how much you're adding in.
But you're using so little. I mean, you can see how little I used of that entire ginger root.
Right.
So I got the 2 teaspoons here. All right, and then the next is a teaspoon of garlic, and I have some fresh garlic cloves here. I'm just going to peel one because this will get me enough to make a teaspoon.
So we're taking that outer skin off, and then we're
Mhm.
gonna add that right in. Same thing. You could get pre-chopped garlic if
You
you
can. You
had
can
that.
even make your own. A lot of my family members, I'm married to a Brazilian, and a lot of them have jars of garlic that they have prepped and ready all the time.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great.
So I have, I'm just gonna pull off that end so you don't have that stem in there. And we're gonna do a little quick chop. You could also use the microplane with this, but I just wanted to show you that. If you don't have a microplane in your home, it's perfectly fine. It is something that I like to use a lot, but you don't need that. You can use just a good old knife. So I am just going to slice and dice this.
Well, and these are being blended. This is all being blended too, right?
Right, so it
Yes.
doesn't have to be real.
No, but like you said,
fine.
you don't want a big piece. That would kind of be hot.
It would be
So-
off-putting, right?
Okay, so could a person meal prep this recipe, chef? And if
Yes.
they did, this particular recipe, this salad, what would they do differently, or what would you do differently if you were going to meal prep it?
What I would do is just get the ingredients ready. So I would have my vegetables chopped, but I might even leave them separate in separate containers at first. The one I'd be a little careful with is the cucumber. Those will go mushy faster.
Maybe save those to chop.
Maybe even the carrot, but if it's just in a cube, it should be fine. And then definitely want to keep the dressing off, but you can make this dressing and store it in a container and have it ready to go and have all those elements, and then just go ahead and throw them
Right.
together when you're ready to use it.
Great.
Okay, so I have the garlic in there. The last thing we're adding is a 1/4 teaspoon of red pepper flakes. Again, this is optional in this recipe.
Just to add a little extra flavor, a little heat.
Yeah, so this, I'm using an 1/8 because my 1/4 is missing, but the 1/8 times 2 is 1/4. So we have our red pepper flakes in there, and that's our last ingredient in our dressing. So we're just gonna go ahead and blend this.
It's going to be a little loud.
Let's see. All right. The quinoa is done. We're going to add our quinoa to,
Right to the bowl?
well, I'm
No?
gonna leave it
Okay.
to kind of cool off a little bit.
Yes.
If I had an empty bowl, I would. The recipe calls for just putting it in the empty bowl, but
With the-
since we have our veggies ready, yeah, we're going to put it into our serving bowl.
So maybe if you were doing this at home, you could cook the quinoa and maybe use it even for another meal. And if you have extra, you could keep that cooling in the fridge so that you could add it to this. I think this would be a great meal prep, like I said, but also maybe if you're traveling and you don't have access to a fridge, or if you're at work and maybe there's not enough room in the break room fridge, this doesn't have to be refrigerated necessarily. Once it's all put together, if it's going to be eaten, within a short time period, you could leave it just as is. You could throw in a little ice pack in your lunchbox, but you wouldn't even necessarily have to. It's kind of one of those things that doesn't have any dairy ingredients. It could be okay left out for a short time.
I freeze it all the time cooked as well.
The quinoa?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll do that with a lot of greens, a lot of whole grains, rice, etc. You want to kind of make your own, I call it like my own takeout meals. Where I
Right.
will, when I have time, make a big batch of something, freeze some of it, and then on those days when I'm in a very big hurry, I can just pull it out of the freezer, have it ready to go.
Yes.
So
Dr. Dudley and Alaina, there were a couple questions about ginger and garlic. So somebody was asking, is ginger in a tube as healthy as when you just grind it from the root form? And then there also was a question about someone had heard that you should use fresh cut garlic instead of jarred or prepared. What are your thoughts as it relates to those things?
Well, so I think that I have sometimes looked for ginger in other forms Usually when I can't find fresh at the grocery store, like I'm at a place that maybe doesn't sell fresh ginger, or I can't find it. Sometimes you can find it frozen in little prepared blended cubes to use that way. But in the tube, I think that sometimes I've seen that they have sugar added and sometimes even like milk solids. So I would be really cautious about that. They do that just to kind of keep the consistency and the freshness. But if you don't want those ingredients, then that's something to think about. Now, using fresh can help with keeping those healthy compounds at their most vibrant. So like I said, we look for white vegetables, and garlic and onion are white vegetables or roots, but things that we want to consume at their freshest if possible. And I agree that sometimes those other forms are maybe, while convenient, might have slightly reduced. I honestly don't know the data specifically about jarred garlic, for example, but I think that if there's a way that you're going to consume them and you're going to be consuming them consistently, then do that. Do whatever gets them on your table. And so if that means that you take the shortcut and you use pre-chopped garlic, I think that's okay. For example, when I'm cooking for 7 people. So often I will use pre-chopped garlic if I have to chop, 5 or 10 garlic cloves for a meal. So I think it kind of depends.
We are going to just be
Yes.
mindful of the time here.
Yes,
We don't
thank
want to
you.
keep you too long. So I have my soup here now. My soup is cooked through, and so I am using a stick blender or an immersion blender to blend it. If that's not something you have in your house, you can use a regular blender, and you'll just ladle the soup by portions into there and then pour it out into a bowl or a pot. But I'm going to go ahead and use this one for time. So take a little bit with the sweet potato. My lips.
So I don't know if anyone has any babies that they're cooking for. I'm hoping that you can hear me. I don't know if anyone has any babies that they're cooking for, but what I was going to say that I would do when my children were much younger, when we're having a meal like this, that is soup. That soup is really hard to feed a baby, but I wanted them to eat the same thing that we were eating. So I would make a soup, blend it finely so that I know that the baby can consume it, and I would cool it down with a little extra cold soy milk or breast milk if it was an infant, like maybe 6 months plus, but still a baby drinking breast milk. I would add that cold to thin out the soup and cool it down. She's adding some milk right now into this
Half a
soup.
cup of unsweetened soy milk.
She's using that soy milk right now, which is great. And again, if you had it cold, that would help cool it down for a child if you wanted to add it towards the end. You can leave some of those chunks in, Chef. I think that's
Yeah,
okay.
we're in a little bit of a
Yeah,
hurry, but if
we're
you're
kind
at
of
home, you
speeding
can take
through, so
longer.
that's okay. You may need a little bit longer for some of those vegetables to get smooth enough, soft enough so that we can blend, but it's also good chunky, honestly.
And
But
if you don't have a blender, you can just kind of mash it up.
just
by
mash it with
hand.
a potato masher. But also you could, if you had to, again, thicken it. What I was going to say is add even some of the quinoa or
Mhm.
add some baby cereal or some blended oats to kind of thicken it up if that was something that you were looking for.
And that's
Doesn't
what it
that look
looks like finished.
beautiful?
So we can
With the
take a
croutons.
taste. Would you like to take a taste?
I would love to take a
Here.
taste.
With the crouton.
Yum.
It might be a little hot.
Delicious.
Oh, so cozy. Yeah, and I like that little bit of heat from the red pepper. I feel that.
Yes.
Kind of on just a touch, not too strong.
Not at all. And you can taste that it has other vegetables in there, but it's still that kind of classic warm tomato soup that you're looking for. And it kind of highlights the fact that you could use a family recipe that maybe usually added something canned, and you could make it fresh in a way that kind of adds more nutrients, which I think is really great.
All right, we're going to quick add our veggies to our quinoa here and our edamame, and then could you take
Yes.
that? And then just pour our sauce in.
Oh,
Don't want it flying. All right, so I'm gonna drizzle this peanut sauce over top. And then the last thing we just have is a 1/4 cup of the sesame seeds, which I have right here.
so sesame seeds or any kind of nut or seed is a great way to add protein. Again, I know we talked about that, but they also add crunch, they
Mhm.
add nuttiness, they add so much flavor, but they're also, adding important nutrients that we need. Sometimes trace minerals that are higher in things like nuts and seeds that maybe are more difficult to find in other foods. So anytime you can, if you can add a nut or a seed or something crunchy
Yeah.
on top, that would be a great
Look at that,
addition.
it's so pretty. And you can
Beautiful.
get different colored sesame seeds as
Right.
well. Yeah, I feel like in this country, we probably don't eat enough seeds. So I'm just stirring all of this and then we'll try it.
Beautiful.
Oh, it's so pretty. And that peanut sauce smells really good as well.
So, Chef, if you were going to add maybe one last takeaway, how a person could get started on a plant-based journey, maybe what would you suggest? And then I'll chime in after you.
Sure, I would say have fun with it. Rather than thinking about, oh, all these things I have to take away, think about all that you get to add into your
Right.
diet. There are so many beautiful plant ingredients out there that we can enjoy. And I like to tell, especially kids, when you go to the store, try to pick an ingredient maybe that you've never tried before.
Right.
And learn about it. Don't be
Right.
afraid to, either read cookbooks, read online, and learn about how to prepare them and have fun with it and think about it from that perspective rather than, oh no, I can't eat anything.
Think about
that
what
I
you're
used
gaining,
to."
not what you're losing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Thank you. And then also what I was going to say, when you're thinking about transitioning towards a plant-based diet or eating more of a rainbow diet, incorporating more rainbow foods, think about what you already know and love. And how could you maybe add more fruits and vegetables to make it more colorful? And also, how could you maybe modify or swap some things that are already in foods that your family knows and enjoys, some culturally appropriate foods or some foods that are maybe family favorites. There's so many different, heritage diets that already incorporate so many great fruits and vegetables, maybe looking into those and seeing maybe what your family could benefit from. But also, like you said, if there's already something that you love, just add that to your repertoire, to your menu more often.
Yeah.
If you already are eating some plant foods.
And look on our culinary medicine website because we have
Yes.
a lot of wonderful recipes
We have a lot of great
like
tips.
these on there. And just have fun with it. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Just enjoy it and let it kind of come naturally over time.
Absolutely.
That's how I feel.
Small, sustainable steps, I think, is really
Exactly.
great. So I want to officially thank all of you. Yes, I do. I thank all of you for coming. I want to start eating my lunch, but thank you all for coming to our Rainbow Diet
Yes, thank
cooking
you.
demo. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to continuing the Plant Powered Challenge. We think it's been really fun. I hope that you enjoy these recipes and the many more that are going to come as well. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.